Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mambo number 5. Dum, 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 dum. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Yeah. Am I canceled now because of that? Because I just sang that song? And like I did a yeah. Because I'm like appropriating some kind of Asian culture, right? I think the Asians are okay with it though. You know? Anyway. God, great start, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Fight Fridays, round 1, fight. I don't know why the fuck I'm not a voice actor. I got this whole studio set up, and I just make dick jokes with it, talking about when my willy tingles. I could be living my dream of just voicing anime cartoons before cancel culture when people were allowed to do other ethnicities. I would love to challenge myself to do some anime. Be like, Kakya, tia. I'd even play like a little anime Japanese girl. Why not? Live out some sexual fantasy. What? Huh? What did I just say? Anyway, moving on. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fight Friday, round 2, fight. It's been a minute since we did a Fight Friday. I feel like we haven't had a card. We've had some cards, but the planets didn't align for me to put one out. And this is a banger of a card. And I'll be honest with you, if Masvidal hadn't of stepped in, probably wouldn't have done this Fight Friday, because it just made this card so much more epic. And it's crazy to think about. It's like the instant buzz that was around Masvidal fighting, if you don't know what's going on. This weekend, Fight Island, first fight in Abu Dhabi, for the UFC. They're getting to UFC 251. They're having Kamaru Usman, 170, the champion. He was supposed to be fighting Gilbert Burns, up-and-comer. It's disrespectful to say up-and-comer. He's been around for years. But what I mean is this is his first time fighting for the title, and a phenomenal fighter, and he's just been wrecking through people. He tested positive for COVID because the UFC does a lot of strict testing and everything to kind of the hoops they have to jump through to be able to have fights, and he tested positive. And late notice, Jorge Masvidal stepped in. I think Jorge Masvidal was the choice before this, and it was over money. He wanted more money than the UFC was willing to give him, so he didn't sign the contract to fight Kamaru Usman. So Gilbert Burns was like, "Fuck it, I'll do it," and then he's out, and they need a replacement. And Street Jesus, Jorge Masvidal, was like, "Okay, now I'm the bad guy. Okay, now y'all motherfuckers need me. Y'all need people like me. People to point your fucking finger and say, that's the bad guy. That's who will fight." Spot on Al Pacino impression. By the way, should be a voice actor. By the way, I'm sure a lot of you people, probably don't even know what that quote is from. Scarface, Al Pacino. "Make way for the bad guy. You need people like me to point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy." Okay. Phenomenal impression. I always love that part in Scarface. If you haven't seen it, kiddies, go watch it. You need to watch it just for historical purposes. That should be a class in high school and college, is making historical movies, like movies that you just have to know, like some of the greatest of all time. Which brings me to my other point, is that I was yesterday went out socially distanced up to San Luis Obispo, got a burger, got it to go, and these people out front, the waiter said something about this dude's mustache, a real hipster kid. He was like, "Yeah, you got that Doc Holliday going on, Val Kilmer, you know?" And the kid was like, "What? From what?" And I could tell instantly because the waiter did like the finger guns, and he was like, from, he was like Tombstone. And the kid, he was in college, and his girl were like, "Tombstone?" And I almost had a heart attack. And then the guy goes, "You ever heard of Wyatt Earp?" And they go, "Who?" And I was like, oh my God. I literally couldn't help myself. I was just overhearing this, and I just literally break out and I just go, "Oh my God, you guys have to go home now and watch Tombstone." Embarrassing, What is with you kids? When I was a kid, we had to watch movies uphill both ways in snow or some shit. But anyway, this UFC fight, gonna be phenomenal. He stepped in on short notice. It's a crazy card. We have Usman versus Masvidal, which is just gonna be a banger. And then we have Max Holloway versus Volkanovski for the 155 title, a rematch. Holloway lost it. Tight decision to Volkanovski in the previous fight. These, I'm hoping Max, I like him. Just his character, him and Rush, character as a person, not the character he plays. I do like his hair though. He looks kind of like a character now. But it's hard with these quarantine fights because you're seeing kind of another variable getting thrown at these fighters because they're having to prepare in weird situations. And a lot of them are saying that, they didn't really have training partners. They did a lot of shadow boxing. They had a couple people come in, but they're all working with restrictions and under different circumstances than they normally would be with a full training camp. And preparing for a fight is one of those things where, man, it's hard. You have to get your mind right. And a lot of it is, and that's what's cool about short notice fights. You look at something like Michael Bisping when he fought Luke Rockhold the time he won the title. He said he felt phenomenal going into that fight because he wasn't overtrained. Because a lot of what fighters do is for their mentality. I remember before my first fight in Puerto Rico, not comparing myself to UFC level fighters, but the mindset of being worried about going into a cage fight or a boxing ring. When I would get in fights in college and just street fights, fights at parties and stuff like that, or in high school, there was no lead up. So you didn't have enough time to be scared. You didn't have enough time to overthink everything. You would kind of just react and be like, well, fuck it, let's go. But preparing for a fight, I remember it felt you would definitely overtrain because you don't want to be thinking that someone else is being more prepared than you are. And I think that's where a lot of fighters, the biggest fight is won or lost, is in those moments. And I remember the night before I had a fight, I went to the gym and I sparred hard. And I remember and I was very nervous, and I remember letting the person I was sparring with connect with hard shots. I know this is fucking weird. I remember letting him connect with a really hard right hand, and when it hit me, I remember being like, I'm going to be fucking fine in this fight, because I was just so worried. I wanted to make sure I have the confidence that I actually could take the punch, that I was actually going to be okay. Like, what's the worst that happens? I get hit very hard, and when I get knocked out or something like that, it was just the mental, being prepared mentally and feeling like that. In hindsight, it wasn't very smart because, the way punching works with your brain can induce a lot of damage. And they say you only have a certain amount of punches you can take. So every time that you take a hard shot, you're not gonna be able to take another one. Like you have a physical limit, because every time you get knocked out, it's your brainstem coming unconnected. And every time you get close to that happening, your brain's gonna shut off. It's a malfunction in our system. That's why when they say he doesn't have a chin on him, it's because either you got knocked out in training, sparring leading up to the fight, or your brain is taking too much damage to where it shuts off earlier to protect functions of the body because it knows what's going to happen. So it's an interesting thing that happens. All that being said is that sometimes these short notice fights and these fights where you're in quarantine and you're not able to prepare enough, you start having doubts and you start feeling like, did I do enough? Man, I wonder if he's having enough training and something like that. Or, I wasn't able to get this. Or people become very OCD about their routines and things like that. And that's something that you kind of lose in this quarantine and under these circumstances. But when you look at a fighter like Max Holloway and these super high level athletes, the reason why I look up to them so much and I respect what they do is because they are experts at being able to shut off all the noise, the little voice in your head. They learn how to shut it off because you can't get to those situations where you're challenged and fall away from them. It's like that's that champion mindset. It's being able to deal with the battle going on in your head. And I think there's a lot of parallels with life and fighting like that, where a lot of that is like you learn how to just beat your own mind. And you learn how to shut off the certain noise and know where you should put your attention. And I think that's why a lot of people love fighting, because it's the purest form of artistry. God, I just hate when I say artistry. But it really is, because it's like everybody, all these sports and everything are all simulating fighting. All these art forms and everything like that, you deal with that same fear of when you're about to go do comedy or you're about to go perform music live, anything. It's going to be, you're risking humiliation. And fighting is that on the ultimate level, because the humiliation you feel from bombing on stage and stuff like that, it's fighting is the physical form of that, where it's like, oh, what's the worst thing that can happen in a society or a tribe or something? You get knocked the fuck out in front of everybody else. And it's weird because other fighters and people who have risked themselves in situations, they don't lose respect. They have admiration for people who can get back up after that. And it's weird. It's always like the beta bullshit people who like, you got knocked the fuck out. And those people who talk shit on Instagram, like, bitch, you've never risked anything in your life. It's such a weird thing that people love to just tack on to people like that, Bars. So that's why I'm excited for these fights. It's going to be great. I think I'm looking for Max Holloway he has to fight a smarter fight, I think, than the first one. I think he gave away quite a bit of leg kicks in that first fight. And he even says, Volkanovski did a lot of point fighting, and you even can see in his preparation for this, for this fight, he was working on a lot of point fighting, and he was also working on some hard leg kicks. I think they saw that earlier, and Max Holloway likes to really set on that first leg, on his front leg. If you don't know, that's where a lot of your power comes from. When you can really set onto it, you have to lean into that front leg. And if you take that away from someone who's a boxer predominantly, or a kickboxer, they start losing a lot of that power. So you start chopping down that front leg in the first couple rounds, you take away a lot of their power in the second, third, fourth round. And I think Max had the bigger shots in that first fight, and I think he's got to be busier in that first couple rounds and not give anything up. Stay on the outside, use that distance. Got to use that jab, baby. Got to use that jab. Just pepper him. Put some pepper in his face, Achoo. Bars. And I'm really excited for the Jose Aldo before Petr Yan. Holy shit. That's going to be an amazing fight. Jose Aldo is... what an amazing fighter. To see him come back, one of my favorite performances of his is the UFC 200, where they had the yellow cage, the yellow octagon and everything. It's a weird flex, but that fight, his stand-up in that fight, phenomenal. I love the way he countered Frankie Edgar and just stood with him. Everything was fucking perfect. If you've never seen that fight, go watch that fight, and it's just like, that's Jose Aldo in his tip-top form. And I would love to see him just win the title again. Petr Yan is no joke, though. It's funny that they gave this fight to Jose Aldo coming off the fight against what is his name? East Coast dude. He fought Henry Cejudo, lost. He's got a really high voice, but he's fucking a beast. He knocks people out. He's got heavy hands, got heavy kicks. Anyway, Jose Aldo lost the fight to him. Everybody knew he won it, and they turned around and gave the fight to Jose Aldo for the title. They're like, yeah, we know you lost on the scorecards, but you won that fight. But Petr Yan Dude, he beat John Dodson and Uriah Faber recently. I thought they shouldn't have fucking gave that fight to Uriah Faber. I feel like that was fucked up, you know? How are you going to give Uriah Faber, Peter Yan, this hungry up-and-comer? That's what sometimes with the... I get that Uriah Faber was like, I don't want to come back for any easy fights. He had retired. But I hate when you see a big name go against a hungry up-and-comer. And it's almost like Highlander, where they're just like, yeah, you're going to eat this person and take their power. Like you get a little bit of the rub, that notoriety. And you're like, build your name off of that fighter. I hate it. It just makes me feel bad because you knew it was going to happen. And then after that fight, there's Rose Namajunas. Phenomenal. Thug Rose versus Jessica Andrade. This is a rematch. Jessica Andrade won, took the title away from Rose. And it was, I don't want to say it was a freak accident because she did that, but Rose was piecing her up, just beautiful stand-up. It felt like in that first round that Rose had to fight a perfect fight, and she was. Everything just so crisp, just picking her apart. And then she went for a Kimura, I believe it was, and she got lifted up, and she didn't release it, and she got slammed on her head and knocked out. Could have fucked up her neck really bad. Luckily, she recovered. And then Jessica Andrade was the champion. Went on to lose it to, I'm going to butcher this name, Zhang Weili. I know I butchered that. But the current champion, who is a fucking beast. But I'm excited for this rematch. I love watching Rose fight. I think her fight with Joanna, they were amazing. That first fight when she knocked her out, just a perfect left hook. It was amazing. And the rematch was great too because she got 5 rounds with Joanna and just outworked her, I think. Beat her to the punch, just technically a little bit better. And it was great. And I'm excited to see Rose win this fight and then fight for the title. If she can beat Zhang, I got to find out her name. That's going to be amazing. Zhang Weili. Zhang Weili. We'll go with that one. If she can beat her, because she's such a strong, explosive, dominant fighter with great technique. But if she can beat her, that cements her, I think, as the GOAT at that weight class. It's hard to argue with Amanda Nunes not being the most dominant woman fighter of all time. She is the GOAT and the lioness, you know. If you don't know what I'm referring to and you just stumbled onto this Fight Friday talk, you're going to be like, what the fuck is Evan talking about right now? But yeah, I'm very excited for this card. From top to bottom, some great fights. Those are just the most notorious fights that I'm excited for. I think Masvidal, he goes all the way back to the Kimbo days, which is crazy. He started as a backyard street fighter with Kimbo Slice in Miami. And he is legit the epitome of just a fighter. He gets in there and fights. He's very dangerous. The way he knocked out Ben Askren was insane. The fight with Nate Diaz, I think no matter how that fight got stopped, he was winning that fight. Just dominating. I think he was too big for Nate. I would love to see him and Nick Diaz just for the fuck of it. That's the thing is I like just watching the matchups. Like just seeing the different styles and everybody have to deal with them and make adjustments. I would love to see him with Nick Diaz. It's hard to say that though because Nick Diaz has been out for so long that you don't really know what he looks like. And that's the thing is like you see it more with female MMA that it hit a warp speed. Is you see a sport that's kind of so new and it's not really new anymore. But if you like go watch. I would say any of the first UFC 50s to 60s, it was such a basic, you were seeing fighters with 1 or 2 art forms. You were seeing the wrestler that was learning boxing. You were seeing like the Sambo fighter. You were seeing the judo guy. You were seeing like the the Muay Thai guy. You were just seeing these very basic art forms that were blended, maybe one or two different art forms in MMA. Now you're seeing complete mixed martial artists. And the thing is that when now everybody's kind of training mixed martial arts, you're seeing the sport progress so fast, and it's still growing and evolving. So these fighters that stay out for 4 or 5 years, and if they're not still being dynamic, like that's the thing, is if you're not evolving with the sport, you get left behind very fast. And that's something that you saw with the female division, is that Ronda Rousey came in and phenomenal for her time. Phenomenal. What she had with judo, it was perfect timing. It was like, it was just the perfect thing to have at that time, because the women didn't have the takedown defense for it. They weren't able to use footwork. They weren't as developed with that. And she was just able to run through people. But the sport progressed so fast, and I think she got caught in the wrong loop. She got caught up with Edmund and was becoming a boxer rather than, it could be a combination of ego and wanting to stay loyal to her trainer, and not wanting to evolve in a different way. She kind of became a boxer, and it was kind of weird to see, because she didn't get, you gotta go with what got you to the dance, and she didn't really evolve that area. So when she started with Holly Holm, you start seeing how much of a disadvantage in the sport had caught up. You look at Holly Holm, who's at a camp like Jackson's, which is like an always progressing, constant state of evolution gym, where you're getting so many mixes of martial artists and different art forms that it kind of blends into being the best. They're kind of on the cutting edge of the evolution of the sport. And she was able to make those reads and adjustments to beat Ronda Rousey. And then when you just saw her against Amanda Nunes, who became who she trained with in Florida, I think it was ATT, American Top Team. She was able to make those adjustments, and she was just light years ahead of Ronda Rousey. When Ronda Rousey came back, Ronda Rousey did the same thing and went in there and tried to box. And even Amanda Nunes was like, why is her trainer making her think she's a boxer? But in her defense, there's other variables in it, whether, she didn't have the knees. She had a whole life of judo that her knees were shot, and maybe she couldn't focus on the takedowns. Maybe it was she couldn't make those adjustments because of physical issues, but it's just interesting to see. And the point I was making is that I feel like the women's division, because for a few years it was more one-dimensional as of recent, because at first there wasn't female MMA, wasn't nearly as big as men's MMA. And then as soon as it hit the UFC, it went just skyrocketed in evolution, which is phenomenal, because now there's fights in the females divisions. Oh, they're fucking beautiful. Sometimes like the highest level of the female division, I sometimes like watching it more than the highest level of the men's division, because you look at Amanda Nunes, she has that knockout power and ability. But sometimes the women's division has to rely more on technique and opportunity and placement of shots, which is beautiful to watch. You look at Shevchenko, her kickboxing, the speed of her punches. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. That is just not even female MMA, mixed martial arts. That is just mixed martial arts in its tip-top. But yeah, very excited for the fights this weekend. I wanted to switch gears, talking about MMA and everything. I wanted to talk about fighting in general. Anything that's what I want to use these Fight Fridays for, is anything that falls under the guise of fighting, whether that's competition, side by side. Listen, I heard the NFL was coming back. I realized that I love watching live competition so much that I might even watch that, just because I crave competition. I get it why people are into sports and everything now, because I only have watched boxing and MMA. and I had enough other outlets that I was able to just, I didn't need to watch it. I had no interest in football or anything. But now with quarantine, I'm like, well, maybe I'll learn about this football thing, the old pigskin. I think we just crave competition. We like seeing things going head to head and seeing the outcome. Giggity. They started doing this dope thing on Instagram Live, and they're allegedly going to turn it into a TV show, which is probably going to ruin it. I'll be honest. What was that show? It was like Lip Sync Battle, and they had like LL Cool J host it, and John Legend's girl, I think, was like a DJ or some shit like that. I only saw some funny clips on it of like when Tom Holland did it or whatever, and he did Rihanna. But when shows hit mainstream, this is where people fuck up and they take like the reality out of things, is when we're like, oh, that's what I think people aren't realizing about the internet. You don't need those fucks anymore. You don't need these studios. You don't need these agents. You don't need these other bullshit cooks to put their fucking ramen noodles in the shit. Okay, like they're literally putting Easy Mac in there. When you've made like this authentic meal from your culture, and then all of a sudden the studio's like, hey, we want to put you on NBC and have you air 3 nights a week behind the Gilmore Girls. And then all of a sudden you have this nice culture thing. They're like, and let me put a little Easy Mac in there. Oh, don't forget about the sponsors. Let me put a frozen burrito in there. Oh yeah, and then we're going to have it be with some boneless wings as the appetizer. And it's like, hey, fuck, get your hand out of my goddamn meal, okay? This is a 5-course meal, and you're shitting all over it. Anyway, the whole point I'm making is that this Verzuz battle thing started out super dope. And what it is they were having a lot of DJs and beat makers, music producers. I don't want to be disrespectful. But they would have them go through their Serato, their catalog, and they would be like Timbaland versus Swiss Beats, and they would just start going back to back playing their songs of shit they produced, and it's fucking amazing. Dude, I'll be honest with you. You have to watch them, because it's basically, you're taking hits, these songs. It's almost like a freestyle battle, if you will. But you're playing the song to song, seeing which one was a bigger banger. And you're kind of going through your catalog of hits. They'll play like 20 seconds of theirs, and they're like, oh yeah, you think that one's, check out this one. Boom. Like, for example, Timbaland and Swiss Beats. I think Timbaland might destroy, man, he's probably my favorite. I think he's got the most unique sound, Timbaland. I think Dre has the best drums. Dre has the best drums and the tightest mixing. Oh, dude, I could talk about this all fucking day. Dre has the tightest mixing of kicks and snares and hi-hats, and he can sit vocals in the mix so fucking elegantly. I love the depth that he has on his kicks, the way he layers drums. That's the thing that I learned from just studying Dre, is I would hit that devil's lettuce, and I'd lay down in Puerto Rico with my headphones on, and I just put on Dre beats, and not the headphones, literally his beats, and I would just start breaking down his beats, and I would start listening for the drums. And I'd listen to the depth of it, the different like little things you don't pick up on that make drums sound fatter when you're adding like a 1/16 delay on a layered drum underneath that just gets it that extra pop at the end of it. The way he uses hi-hats as not even hi-hats, they're almost like layered in the beat to go along with the actual instrument part of the beat. So Dre has the best drums to me, and I think melodically, man, Timbaland, dude, my favorite hip hop beat of all time might be "Get Your Freak On," Missy Elliott, "Get Your Freak On," and the way that Missy Elliott rode that beat, giggity. Those were like the perfect pair. They are like the Dre and Eminem, Missy Elliott and Timbaland. They just go together perfectly. Yeah, I would say melodically, I think Timbaland. Best usage of samples, though? Best usage of samples? Kanye West. Listen, you can say what you want about Kanye West, but you cannot shit on his samples and the shit he would make from samples. If you are a music head and you got some time on your hands, go on YouTube and just look up Kanye West samples, and you'll find these compilations of showing you what the original sample was and what he did with it and how he weaved it into there, and like how some songs, look up My Dark Twisted Fantasy, or what is it, My Sick Dark Twisted Fantasy? Anyway, that video, if you've never seen the Dark Twisted Fantasy music video, it's like a short film. Amazing. I need to go watch it again. But that album might be a perfect album to me from start to finish. It is a journey, that whole album. The way he set it up, everything is set up to listen to in progression, which I think is great. From the start to the finish. That album has a start and a finish. And I think too much you start getting compilations rather than albums when it comes to music. I think too many times people just start putting songs together and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I have this many songs. All right, well, you kind of pick what the first song should be, and maybe we'll have this be the end. But then that's it. You know, I think it's dope when an artist takes the time to tell a story with an album, to have that whole thing be a progression of different things within the album. Yeah, Kanye West is the best at samples. Some of the hottest beats as well. I thought Watch the Throne, amazing. I wish there was no fallout between him and Jay-Z, because then that Watch the Throne 2 would have been dope. But dude, speaking of compilations and combos, if you know me, you know I love Marvel. You know I love a good crossover. I thought the Jay-Z and Kanye West album together, phenomenal. A phenomenal idea as well. Doing joint albums. I love and I was talking to a buddy about this today. There was the Kanye West Jay-Z, Watch the Throne, phenomenal. And then you got the Eminem and Royce da 5'9" album. Lyrically, sickest piece of music from a lyric standpoint. They went so hard on lyrics and just wordsmithing, if you will. Bad meets evil. But there was a song that came out last night that it blew my mind because it was the song that I didn't know I needed. And it was the Eminem and Kid Cudi, Slim Shady and the Moon Man, I believe it was. The Adventures of Slim Shady and the Moon Man. This was the song I didn't know I needed. This is the album I didn't know I needed. But once I got a taste of the song, we need that album. And I will argue that Eminem and Kid Cudi are a better combination than Eminem and Royce da 5'9". Simply because, and this is no disrespect, I love Royce da 5'9". I've listened to every one of his albums. Always support. Slaughterhouse, amazing. Slaughterhouse like 6 years ago, phenomenal. Welcome to Our House, great. Eminem and Royce da 5'9", for it to be a compilation album, are almost too similar. It's great for what it is, a very lyrical piece. They're almost too similar, though, to complement each other nicely, though. I think Eminem and Kid Cudi are balanced enough in different ways where Eminem can be lyrical and Kid Cudi can be lyrical. He showed on this song. He's very lyrical, spitting bars. And but I feel like with Kid Cudi, what Kid Cudi does, the motherfucker can so fucking hard. Kid Cudi's another example of storytelling in his songs, in his albums. Albums feel like a story. Albums feel like a moment captured, not a compilation of music. And Kid Cudi's one of those people. And that's why I think it's special, because you kind of feel the same thing with an Eminem album. Is They're a capture of a mood in a moment, a perspective, a message. It's all wrapped up into a moment, a tone throughout the whole album. That's the difference between the Eminem album. Kid Cudi, I think Eminem has a tone and Kid Cudi has a vibe, bars. But I think they're different enough, and it's so different that they just go together. It's like some sweet and sour sauce, you know? It's like that, man, what is it? It's like butter pecan. You know, when you get something that's like, you put something like salt and sweet together. You just put that together in there and you just got a nice little mix up here and get it done. But it's like, it's that combination. And I think they will have the best album musically. Like, from a song standpoint, that album would be phenomenal. Just in the quality of song. I'm not talking about verses and everything. Eminem's going to bring the hottest verses there ever was. Kid Cudi makes some of the musically best bridges and choruses. He is like, man, I don't know who to compare it to. There's a sound that even Billie Eilish has, where it's like the verses are so musical as well. Kid Cudi is that version of that in hip hop, and tonally, it's just so, it's nice to listen to. He's nice on the ears, and he can just, hey, Mr. Rager. I fucking love that shit. But that's how I feel. I feel like that's the album. And how does that fit into a Fight Friday? It fucking doesn't. But guess what? It's my podcast, bitch. And you're going to listen to whatever I want you to listen to. No, I'm just trying to stick on the side of competing and competition. And I think comparing those things falls under Fight Friday of what combination albums would be the best. I don't know if you guys saw this. You had to. If you're here for Fight Friday, you saw this. Mike Perry, UFC fighter, got in an altercation at a restaurant. Knocked the fuck out an old man. Listen, you gotta know this. You gotta be aware of your surroundings. You gotta be able to see in people. This is the thing. This is why I think everybody should train martial arts. You gotta know that it's possible for someone to punch you in the fucking mouth, and you gotta know it's possible for someone to choke you the fuck out. You gotta know that's real. Because if you're in this weird world, too much persona and not enough content in the character, a lot of motherfuckers are walking around with way too much persona, where they think they're the fucking man because they've never had their actual content challenged. So they think they can actually do a lot more than they really can until Mike Perry punches you upside the fucking head. You gotta just know what's reality. And if you watch this video, I'll take you back. I'll paint the picture. Mike Perry walking through a restaurant, was getting kicked out. Apparently he was a little drunk. You see his girlfriend, who cornered him in his last fight, 1-0, shout out to her, walking out ahead of him. And then it's like a girl with them, who I thought was the girlfriend at first. But they get kicked out, and they're like something about calling the cops. And Mike Perry's like, I'm not going to leave because you're going to call the cops. I have my own side of what went down. And then I guess he like someone put his hands on Mike Perry, so Mike pushed him or something. He was like, he put his hands on me first. And that's the thing. You gotta know in reality that if you put your hands on anybody, you have to at least expect them to swing back on you. Something is gonna happen, okay? Once you cross over the bounds of physically touching someone, things change, and you have to know that's a reality. And you also know this is a reality, that when you start making fun of someone who's a UFC fighter while they're drunk and they're already used to being made fun of for not being very bright, you're going to have a bad time. And while Mike Perry's drunk, like that's the thing, is like if you're an older man and you're smart, or you just know to diffuse the situation, you see someone younger or someone drunk who is not going to make the best decisions, don't provoke them. Just be like, hey man, listen, let's just relax, go outside, let's talk. this old man, Mike Perry's obviously slurring his words. He's like, I got a side too, you know? Yeah, but y'all gonna call the cops and tell them. And this old man in his face goes, y'all gonna call the cops and blah, 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 like imitating him being dumb. And he goes, yeah, we're gonna call the cops. And Mike Perry just stops while his dude's making fun of him. He just goes, I will knock your old ass out right now. And obviously, if you saw Mike Perry fight a couple weeks ago, you know he's telling the truth. And the old man rushes him. He like starts putting his hands on him, everything. Catches him slipping. Mike Perry knocked out this old man. And listen, while I feel bad, if you touch someone or you threaten someone with violence and you actually go to attack them, I feel like everybody has the right to defend themselves. I don't care if you are a UFC fighter. In a situation like that, if someone goes to attack you, you don't have to be like, oh, I don't want to blah, blah, blah. Unless it's a female. Unless you start getting in that female territory, you kind of got to just take those slaps, you know? You best believe when your boy lived in Puerto Rico, dating Puerto Rican women, your boy took some slaps. Your boy would just be in there in the pocket with the head movement, just dipping and rolling with it and bow, trying to Anderson Silva that shit, all defense, all Philly shelling it and blah, blah, blah. And you know, Puerto Rican girls, Puerto Ricans in general, we come stock with that ability to box. So they're in there and they know no punches are coming back. It's like bag work for them. It's like, you know, when you see people just working them pads and they're just like, bah, 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 bah. You know why they look so good and they can throw so fast and so confident? They know punches aren't coming back. So that's how Puerto Rican girls get with you. When they're in the pocket and they know there's no threat of you hitting them back, they just start treating that shit like Mayweather and pad work. They're just ba 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 ba, slipping and everything. Ba ba ba. They're looking off camera and shit, saying shit like ba 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 50-0 ba 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 ba. You know. Anyway, so off topic. But yeah, you don't hit women. I don't think dudes should be hitting women in that situation. Dude, you see some videos on World Star Hip Hop where sometimes, and that's the thing is like, that's just my own moral creed, my old moral compass I follow is like, I don't want to hit a female. But you see some dudes hit some females on World Star, and I'm like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have been trying to punch a man in the face and tell a man he ain't shit. Like that's when reality comes in. It's like, that was reality. You just met, hello, nice to meet you. What's my, oh, reality, nice to meet you. Right in the face. It's crazy. I also don't like that, because that's something that would happen too. A few of the altercations that I got into in the street setting, as the kids say, was because of girls in the circle of people that I would do hood rat stuff with. Would be way too cocky and confident because they knew people there in the circle could fight, or they just didn't think there would be repercussions for their actions. And I would always hate that when girls get in guys' face in those situations, and because they know they're not going to have to deal with the repercussions of it. And they'd be all in a guy's face pushing them, fuck you, bitch, you're just a fucking pussy. And I'm like, oh no, you're not going to deal with this. But anyway, moving on. It's sad to see Mike Perry deal with this. And obviously Mike Perry's going through some shit. Anybody who, you know, has these kind of outbursts and certain things, and the lashing out when you see people act that way in public. Whenever people are kind of loose cannons, it's usually stemming from something like that. Dude, when I was in high school, there was a point where people didn't even like to drink with me anymore. And it was because I was just going through such shit, you know, with my brother passing away and just stuff that I was dealing with. I was always looking for an outlet, and fighting was that, because I would get drunk and instantly try to start a fight. It was because I just needed to get that out. So I see that in other people. When you see them having these outbursts and always just taking it so far in these situations where it shouldn't be happening, it's because they just gotta get that steam out. But But it's sad to see that with Mike Perry and for him to go through that, because I know it's going to be issues. And I was hoping, he had his girl corner him. It was a funny thing. It was cute. But like you see it after. Like you hope that it's actually going to be good. Obviously he just went through divorce. Now he's with his girl. It doesn't seem very healthy because you're all I need in this world. Fuck everyone else. Ugh, that's never a good sign. A little unbalanced. Whenever people are way too overdoing it on social media, it's never good. Whenever you see people being like, you are my life and blah, 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 and they're just overselling it on the gram, it's not looking good. That means you're overcompensating for something. Or when people get joint Facebook accounts, my first question is always like, oh, which one of you guys cheated on the other one? Which one of you has the trust issues and the other one abused it? Not good. So I think Mike Perry's going to be going through a loop. That's just rough, man. It's rough because I know he left his camp, and I know he's going through that divorce, has this girl. He's trying to have her. And that's the thing is like, in a relationship, a lot of times when you're unbalanced, you look for that other person in the relationship to be the balance. And that's not what relationships are supposed to be. You're not supposed to rely on that person for your happiness. I learned that the hard way growing up, because when you're going through things, you look for happiness and stability in other people. But the truth is you don't want that. You can't. It's not attainable. For you, you're eventually going to be unhappy, and they're eventually going to be unhappy because you're putting a lot of shit on them, stress and pressure that they don't deserve. And when you can't get that happiness through them, you're going to take it out on them. And you saw that in this Mike Perry video where he was just like, fuck you, bitch. You're not on my side. You're not on my side. And he was like, this was after he knocked the dude out. And then what did he say? He says, you don't want to know that this is reality, that this is what it really is. He said something that was fucking gangster. Besides him just casually saying the N-word as a white dude. But he's from the hood. I guess he gets that pass. When I lived in Puerto Rico, everybody said the N-word. And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I know Puerto Ricans were in the slave trade, but it just feels weird, But he said, if you touch me, you gonna die. I thought that was some gangster ass shit. Because he just knocked this dude out with one punch. And then he literally puts his hands like this to like show people like, don't get near me. I'm not going to hit you, but don't get near me. And then someone got near him and he goes, get back the fuck up. And he goes, if you touch me, you gonna die. And he really dragged out that die. There was like 37 eyes in that shit. But it was great. But dude, I can't wait for these fights. Listen, here's how I spend my fight nights. Me and my girl, we're real ceremonial, okay? We like to have a good meal. We like to set the room. We like to we get a couple drinks going, Zevias. We're super old. We like those, the sodas made with Zevia, calorie-free, sugar-free, phenomenal. They should be a sponsor. Zevia, hit me up. We like to get a couple of those. We like to get some wings. We'll do maybe some Grubhub, but we set the mood, It's nothing like a fight night. I like to get a good workout in during the day so I can enjoy my meal and just watch the fights. Wake up Sunday morning, watch the press conference. Oh, it's glorious. It's a good reset of the week, So I'm excited. Hope you are too. Betting odds. Here was the last thing I'll talk about. So I used to be an avid gambler on fights. I literally, when I was living in Texas, I would bet on fights to be able to pay bills. Dark days, dark days. I needed the money, and it made watching fights very stressful, but it also made me research fighters very, very thoroughly. I would be researching fighters all the way back to like their amateur days, just to see how padded their record really was, just to see who they really fought. So I'd be tracking fighters back to their amateur days and tracking all of the fighters that they fought to really get a feel for, is this fighter legit or not? Pro tip, if you are trying to bet on fights to win money, you should be betting on the undercards. That is a pro tip for you. The best success I would ever have in those lopsided fights are going to be on the earlier card, because it's not going to be so evenly matched a lot of the times. And if you start looking at just the records, it's not going to show that. What you have to do is you have to start researching the fighters, go on SureDog. You have to look at the fighters' records, what organization they fought in, research the organization to see if it's a legit organization, and then start looking at the fights they had. Who was the fighter? A lot of times you start looking at these UFC fighters early on in the card. You'll see they're like, 17-2. That's a phenomenal record. That must be great. But then you go look at 14 of their fights were against people who were 3-11, 2-8, or they had very bad losing records. And a lot of times, here's the thing, a lot of people go to like Indian casinos and shit, and they'll take these fights just to pad their record with people who have no business being in the fight, you know? So you have to start doing research like that. And then you have to look at their finish rate. You want to try to get an early stoppage knockout. That's the best way to win money. So you start looking for those fighters who have KOs and shit. High risk, high reward. And that's what you got to do. So for this fight in general, this card, it's hard to pick during quarantine. It's hard to make educated guesses on what you think, especially when you got Masvidal on such short notice. He just cut 21 pounds. This motherfucker cut 21 pounds in like 5 days to make this weight. So you don't know where his gas tank is at, which could mean he could be going for an early knockout. But you got to look at Kamaru Usman, who's had a full camp to prepare. If he can weather that storm, you know he's going to try to grapple fuck Jorge Masvidal. So that's where it's like, you don't know what to do. So I would say the safe bet on that fight is going to be Kamaru Usman. But the risk bet, and the one that I would make would be Jorge Masvidal for an early knockout. That's what I would be going for. I don't see this going 5 rounds. If it does, I think it's going to be for Usman. I think a safe bet would be, and that's the thing, is Jorge Masvidal is the underdog. So it would be a risk bet because you'll win more than you would lose. There's more to be won betting on Jorge. That co-main event, Max Holloway. I think he's a good bet. I don't see him knocking out Volkanovski. So it's like, it's a rough bet because you don't know. He said he was also doing Zoom training, which I don't know if that was a troll. But I would still bet on Max Holloway. This is if you're doing like a DraftKings bet. This is different. This is like you have to pick like 4 or 5 fighters and you make a team. So I think Max Holloway would be a good DraftKings bet. Because I think he's going to rack up a lot of points and he could get that decision. He has a high output. I think Rose Namajunas is going to win it. I think she's a great bet, but she's also the overdog. So it's like, that's an obvious one. The one where I think you could actually make good money. This is my pick. If you're going to bet on one fight, bet on this fight. Paige Van Zant versus, what was her name? Oh, Amanda Ribas. She is an 800% or minus 800 underdog. That means you could bet $10 and win $80. Listen, if you haven't made the bets yet, go make this bet. Because at the end of the day, you could lose. Be willing to lose $10, $20, whatever you were going to bet. You have to be willing to lose it. But I think there's an opportunity here. Paige Van Zant is on the end of her contract. What is her name? Fuck, I keep forgetting her name. Amanda Ribas. Phenomenal up-and-comer. Great black belt in judo, black belt in jiu-jitsu. Has had a lot of great finishes. She beat Mackenzie Dern, who's another great grappler, great submission game. Paige Van Zant has been choked before, and I think being such a skew, not that I'm saying that she's more experienced in high-caliber fights than Paige Van Zant, but I think this fight, with how skewed the ratio is, a minus 800, it's pretty crazy, especially for a girl who I believe is 9-1, and Paige Van Zant's like 8-4. But that doesn't matter because Paige Van Zant's been fighting those higher profile fights. But I think for a minus 800, it's a good bet to bet on Amanda Ribas for an upset. Even if it's $10, $20, you bet a $20 bet on this fight, you could be walking away with $160 just on that. And I don't know what it is for a submission finish. It could be even more. A lot of times when you bet on like Bovada or something like that, there's other bets you can place within that bet on whether you think it's a submission finish, or even picking the round. So I would look for I want to say like a second or third round finish, submission for Amanda Ribas. So that's my picks. That's my Fight Friday. I hope you enjoyed it. I love talking to you about all this. Any questions, comments, concerns, questions for the regular podcast? I'm going to start doing like a questions and answering kind of thing. So go ahead and submit those in my DMs. And remember, no matter what, I love you. And remember, round one, fight.